Well, good morning. We're lucky today to have all around entertainment magnate George Washington Laws with us. And he does everything. He screenwrites, he produces, he directs, he creates whole universes. But I'll let him tell you about all that. So, George, could you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hey, George Washington Laws the second. Yeah, writer director type. Do a lot of the other stuff just because, it's Seattle indie and you tend to find yourself wearing a lot of hats. Trying to build all kinds of entertainment things just so that we have more around here that makes it easier for me to make all my little fantasies and things. Pleased to have you. Sorry, pleased to be here.
You're so used to doing it yourself. It's pleased to have you here. Yeah. Well, both are true. So, George, I met you as a screenwriter. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we're both members of Northwest Screenwriters Guild, a proud group which we want to give plugs to. But is that your favorite thing, really?
It's kind of between that and directing. Um, I feel like screenwriting ought to be my favorite thing because that's where I really create the worlds. That's where all the ideas come forth. And when a script comes together, it's pretty satisfying. But in directing, there's something about the interaction with other people and the problem solving involved, where when everything comes together there's just a little something extra. You see everyone kind of fall into place and know that you had a hand in it. And as I discovered during my recent directorial effort, I actually really like working with actors. I'm a much more of an actor's director than I thought. So I'd say screenwriter is primary, but director is close second.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, you've also acted, as we'll see a little bit of here, because you sent a clip from one of your movies. So, acting isn't one of your top three or top four.
Um, it's an interesting case where I don't see myself as an actor so much as a human prop. I want to be if I'm in front of the camera, it's usually for like gags and silent film and stuff and physicality. I haven't really experienced much of hopping into a character per se. That being said, I'm going to an actor seminar today after this. I'm going to look into it a little more just because those connections are really useful. And I wouldn't mind being in front of the camera a lot. I can do it pretty easily. But yeah, no, it's just not one of my main focuses.
Hmm. Well, one thing I want to make sure we talk about, so I'm going to bring it up immediately, is you have created a whole universe, a very interesting offering for independent filmmakers with your Diaspora series. And this is upcoming. And I'd like you to tell everybody about that because to me, it's really cool. It's a wonderful concept. And it's one that people could do with a relatively meager budget, which a lot of us have. So please, if you could go into that a little bit.
Right, yeah. So it's part of an experimental production thing called the Anthology Jam. The idea being that it's much like a film production contest, like the 48-hour film project, where a lot of teams all create short films for the same thing. But in this case, it's collaborative instead of competitive. And our inaugural theme is Diaspora, a very Star Trek style sort of space opera. And it's not the sort of thing where I wanted to make a whole dictionary of all the alien races and determine a big history to the universe and stuff. It's all just based around a very simple central hook, um, which is that humanity has gone out into the stars, but something went wrong during the first launch. And now all the human colony ships and scout ships and military vessels that went out to explore have been scattered across the entire universe and have no way of knowing where all the others are or where Earth is. And they are trying to find each other. And the idea here is that from that like simple little central hook, um, anybody who's participating in the jam and making a short in the diaspora universe can tell a story of their own starship and can kind of put their own spin on it. You can stick to the idea of, okay, here's your isolated starship out in the search for the rest of humanity. Here's the weird things they encounter. But actual Star Trek and other space operas, they tend to be other things as well. Episodes tend to be police procedurals or investigations or courtroom dramas or horror stories. So you can just do a classic sci-fi tinged story. You could have a romance between your crew members. You could have a murder mystery where the ship's captain gets killed and the second officer now has to conduct the investigation. You could kind of do any style of story just within the theme. And the idea there is to make it as inclusive as possible so that any producer locally can use the resources we provide, use the theme, put everybody in the uniforms and costumes and such, and make it all fit together aesthetically and thematically, but can tell the story that they're best at.
Hmm. Well, I know that the Northwest Screenwriter Guild member, I think probably 8 of them have already written short screenplays for this. And
Yeah,
they've been
yeah.
as
And
different as night and day. Like you said, horror stories, romances, meeting good alien races, meeting mean alien races,
mhm,
meeting
exactly.
rogue starships that are coming after you that have turned into pirate ships, basically. All this stuff is happening and it's been so much fun. So
And
and
that's what I was hoping for. I wanted it to be a thing where I guess I'm kind of anti-inspired by a lot of world building that I've seen and that I've done, where a writer will often try to fill out every nook and cranny of their universe before they even tell a story in it. And that feels like it crowds out possibility rather than providing something to work with. And so I wanted this to be something where it has this very simple, strong central premise, and all these things can be grown around it. And to my immense relief, that's what's been happening with people's scripts. I've been seeing all kinds of individual ideas of where to take it. We've had, like you mentioned, horror stories. We've had completely irreverent comedies where the one crew encounters a satellite broadcasting alien porn, as I recall. We've had a gaggle of odd stories, and this is just the writers. We have some teams coming in who are, going to do their have their own story ideas or are looking for more scripts, and I'm kind of eager to see where they take performances and what casts they have and how they use the production sets we give them and what they come up with on their own to bring in.
well, that was one thing I wanted to mention too, was the whole thing about production sets. You were thinking of like renting one big space for a certain amount of time, setting up a basic bridge for a ship, and then letting every team come in to make their short script happen for 3 or 4 days and able to redesign the bridge a little bit so it looks
Yes.
like their particular starship, but not so much that it doesn't show up on the next that it doesn't show up as similar to the others. So yeah, I love the whole concept, and it's been a lot of fun. So I wanted to mention that first.
I just gave my set designer the go ahead to start building a prototype for like part of the set. That'll let us kind of extrapolate from it how much the rest of the set's going to cost, what it's going to require. And I hope to get some designs out of that and the actual thing to get pictures of and show footage of as
Well,
part of the promotion.
when you have a fundraising thing going, or you have a website to send money to or something, let me know and I'll put it on the website that's
Absolutely.
connected to this webcast. Yeah. So let's move on to you recently directed something called Fire and Oak. Could you talk about that?
Yes, Fire and Oak is based off of a script from Susanna Stengel, a fellow Northwest Creators Guild member. She and I were part of a short, ill-fated production hub up in Shoreline Community College. The actual film people up there are great, but there was one person who tried to set up kind of a community production thing, much like I'm trying to do, but they didn't really have a plan going forward. We all proposed various scripts to make during it. Susanna had a couple. She had one that was a bunch of cast members all auditioning for the same part, and the other one was Fire and Oak. I voted on Fire and Oak at the time for our production hub because it was a two-hander. It seemed like it'd be simple to do. Then that fell apart, and she approached me a little bit later saying, "Hey, still kind of want to get the script off the ground. I like what you said about it. Would you mind directing it? And I'd leapt at the chance. From Diaspora, you can kind of tell that my main interest is science fiction and fantasy and escapist sort of stuff. Fire and Oak is a psychosexual drama, two-hander, kind of,
What do you
two
mean by
front,
two-hander? Just
two
tell.
characters.
Mhm.
Yeah, so basically based around the dialogue between two characters, and it was outside my usual purview. But I'm trying to grow as a creative. I don't just want to be laser focused on one theme. I think that makes it brittle and keeps you from really innovating. So I wanted the chance to direct something that was outside my usual comfort zone, and we made it in middle of last year. We had a screening of it a couple of weeks ago, and it's going to be on the festival circuit, something that helps get everyone's profiles together. Myself, Susanna, the writer, and Ed Castaneda, the producer, who is another local filmmaker who makes a lot of fun little things.
Hmm. No, you sent all of us a while back a thing called a Fool's Fantasy, which looked really fun. And you were an actor in this as well as the director. But this
Yeah.
was just what'd you call it? The concept reel that you sent around?
Yeah, a proof of concept trailer, although the DP hates me calling that, but it is what it is. Um, it was basically back during COVID. I was going a little crazy, and I had previously been part of the Seattle film scene in a few little like no budget indie features, and I'd fallen out for a little bit, and I wanted to get back in. And so I was obsessing over something to make, anything to make as an excuse to reconnect with all my film buddies. And there was a streaming service at the time called the Fantasy Network. I spotted them as sponsors for the also sadly defunct Seattle Film Summit. And I looked at their stuff, saw some other series and shows, and got that usual arrogant creator thought of, I could make stuff better than this. They're wasting their potential and getting mad and that kind of thing. I was a lot more polite about it when I spoke to them and pitched them my idea. And the then head of it, Ben Dobbins, said, okay, you're very enthusiastic. I can see that, but I need more than a pitch. You need to come back to me with like some kind of proof that you can get something made, get this thing started, show me some kind of meat here, that we can make something, make a stew out of here. And so I went off and I gathered together all my film buddies, wrote up a little short script that I thought I could manage, and wanted it to demonstrate the basic idea, which is that I wanted a fantasy adventure that played out kind of like a silent film. So slapstick, physical comedy, against a background of weird fantasy, odd little thing where this character who's simply called the Fool has hapless encounters while he's out on a quest. The trailer was sort of an example of what one of those encounters would be. He faces off with the Ogre Knight to get a treasure, inside of which is simply a plea to further fund the project, and gives me a chance to show off a little bit of physical comedy and a little bit of how it's all going to be um, visual logic to how the Fool handles his problem. Yeah, yes. So the context of this is that my character, the Fool, has just faced the Ogre Knight, has successfully disarmed him, and thinks he's won. Then the Ogre knocks him on ass. And it's a scene where he's got me down on the ground and is just beating 10 kinds of tar out of me. And then my character sort of responds with his very weak attempt to kind of fend the ogre off.
Okay, great. Well, I'll play that at the appropriate spot, and let's continue.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to be like just visual gags like that. So we made it. It was the first thing I had produced and directed myself. It had been only been student films before then. It was a whole rigmarole to make it. Um, Part of it ended up being paid for by by a car insurance payout from an accident I got into while on my way to scout the filming location we ended up using. So a lot of stuff happened for it to happen. And it was a very good learning experience. It cleaned out some of my savings and then finished it and was ready to present it to the Fantasy Network, and then they went defunct. And I kind of just now had this proof of concept that I couldn't really do much with. We tried to swerve into a crowd fund, but this is something that I was using to reintroduce myself to the community. I didn't have the sort of network at the time that would support a crowd fund.
Mm, mm.
So,
Well,
one
I
of
think
those
it's,
lessons learned.
yeah, I think it's a lot of fun, and it could be a real fun concept that wouldn't be expensive to make. A lot of what you call
Yeah.
two-hander scenes, with the fool going on and meeting more disasters along the way. It reminded me a little bit of Monty Python and the Three-Headed Giant with Sir Robin.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But well, you also, among your other accomplishments, were the assistant director on our Mythos Murders set.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
which is pr probably the most extensive feature film I've worked on so far. Had an actual budget and everything. Because
So, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying I've worn various hats on friends' no budget features back when I was really only part of the Shoreline Film Program filmmaker crowd. And Mythos Murders was the first time I had had such an important role on such a professional budgeted production.
Hmm. How did you like the shoot? How was it? What was the team like for you, and how did it
Oh,
seem?
absolutely fantastic. I liked working with just about everybody. Um, I yeah, Bry Troyer, our main producer, was just the nicest guy. Sandra was a very easy director to work with. Everybody on that set, I especially liked working with Isla Carda, the unit production manager, another local filmmaker whose stuff is slowly coming out and being seen. Just very competent people who had the same passion as I did. I am hoping to at some point work with Ryan Purcell, our director of photography, in the future. I have a as of yet unscheduled coffee to have with him sometime soon.
Hmm.
But yeah, absolutely wonderful production. I like the people. I liked the dog that we had around a lot. I believe that was Joel, our production designer's dog. And the locations we went to were all a lot of fun. There was that, oh God, that one place where we had the ponds and we set up that fog, and it was like being in Ridley Scott's Legend for a moment. All those fog effects coming down through the God rays of sun onto the clear water. Just an overall positive experience.
Of course, I'm very prejudiced for that movie,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
I'm glad. I know it was an enjoyable experience for you because I saw you smiling a lot while you were there.
I like being on set. I feel almost surprised about it because, film is my passion, so obviously I should be, but I'm kind of a lazy guy. I like staying home and being on my computer and such. But being on set, I feel like I come to life. And assistant director was a stressful job, but it put me right next to the driver's seat. I got to watch Sandra and Ryan working the entire time, and it was just a delight to see everyone come together. When I directed Fire and Oak, it was kind of the same thing. About the third day, I was just kind of sitting there and watching everybody know where to go and get things in place, and just grinning. Uh, I like being in those groups of people where people all have a sense of purpose and all have their separate passions that they're putting into it. I don't know if it's some kind of weird architect mindset where I like to see everybody in their place or something, or I just pick up on the enthusiasm around me. But even in a job like AD, where I'm just standing there giving people bad news about like, hey, here's all the time you have left for this shot, go hurry it up, hurry it up. just being in their ear as a buzzy little annoying fly, I still greatly enjoyed myself. And you know, part of it is the problem solving. Every now and then there's some little discussion about how a shot isn't working, or oh, maybe we need to move the lights here, or how do we adjust this? And it always comes together, and it's always satisfying when the things fall into place.
Well, that's partly because Ryan and Sandra are so good and they work together so well.
Mm.
They've really developed her. And then having Rachel there as script supervisor, she was a
Oh,
great
Rachel's
help too.
fantastic. Yeah. The sacrifice scene, where you and some others are all in that corpse makeup and have the daggers around there. There was something about watching you and watching I think his name was Carlson, the host of that area. All of you in the makeup and doing the knives and screaming. I thought that, for a bunch of folks who aren't primarily actors, it came across really intensely and memorable. I really liked that.
Yeah, well, that included Ayla and Nikki and Riza also.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know Riza has done some acting.
Oh, yeah. She's a graduate of the University of Washington Film School. She's done it all basically,
Yeah,
at
yeah.
least there. But well, is there anything else I should ask you about you or about anything or anything else you'd like to say to anybody
Goodness.
looking at this saying, hey, this is the guy I want to give $1 million to make my movie or whatever it is, you know?
So I'm working on two pilots. One is for the new residents, which is kind of a Twin Peaks-esque mystery in a town kind of thing. Everybody in this one small city has vanished. Years later, they haven't figured out what happened, and the government has opened up the town for repopulation. And the new residents move in, and they're all kinds of weird outsiders and cast-offs who are just looking for a cheap place to live. And since people are afraid that the vanishing will happen again, the rents in this town are cheap. So you get a lot of people who are kind of on the outside of society or vulnerable, and they have to basically build a new community in the ruins of this old one. And as they do so, and you kind of watch this gaggle of oddball characters learn to operate as a town and a community together, the mystery of the vanishing starts creeping back into play, and they have to figure out what's going on and survive weird, horrible things in the shadows and such.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
So, like I said,
oh, go
kind of
ahead.
Twin Peaks, only more community based than one investigator based.
Hmm.
The
And,
other pilot is called The After Office. Um, Similarly, in apocalyptic vision, it is about an interdimensional messenger service which goes to worlds that have just experienced apocalypses. Um, I call it Children of Men meet Doctor Who because, like Doctor Who, you have these mysterious visitors to other worlds, but they specialize in worlds that have ended. And so, after the nuclear war has happened, after the gray goo has receded, and the few survivors are clinging in the strange wasteland, the After Office shows up to help them pick up the pieces. And I'm writing the pilot for the first world that's visited, which is sort of a combination of a biological disaster meets 50s to 60s mods versus rockers London. And yeah, it's my pilot to explore that concept. And if it takes off, the idea is that every story arc, you'll have an after office member visiting a different apocalypse and sort of befriending the folks there. Everything starts super dark and then becomes kind of uplifting. And it's all about rebuilding after disasters, which I think is something that a lot of people today can identify with.
well, hey, well, thank you for all that, and thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark.
You are a very um, what multi-talented person in
I'm
the
a maniac.
and I was amazed when you called yourself lazy. That's the one thing I've never seen you as being. It always
Well,
seems
you
like you're
only see
busy,
me
busy,
during
busy.
when I'm participating in something, at which point it seems like I'm very energetic, but there are so many times in between the meetings and the script discussions where I'm just at home kind of zoning out on the latest game. I'm just playing a bunch of UFO 50 right now when I'm, you need your downtime.
Oh, sure. But to think of you as lazy, no. Yeah, sure. Someone who's smart and realizes they need downtown is one thing, but you're definitely not sitting around on the couch getting fat, you know. But hey, well, thank you for being here, amigo. I appreciate it a lot. And I hope that this webcast online for you will bring investors and bring fans and bring jobs and bring all of that. So
Yeah, we'll see. And I hope that this webcast of yours continues and we start getting some more of our local voices out because we got a lot of talented people here.
I plan to play a fool's fantasy at the end as the credits roll, the little teaser for it. So take care,
All right.
George.